What up, player profiler nation? It's Matty Kiwoom. Welcome to the latest installment of The Game Plan. Please subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel. And if you would be so kind to your boy, click that like button and go ahead and leave a comment while you're on here. Let us know what we got right and what we got wrong. Just, help your boys algo in the YouTubes. I'm so excited for today's guest, ladies and gents. I mean, we're going to be talking about Superflex Dynasty startup theories and strategies, but this guy is one of the most entertaining, one of the best guys in space. So I'm very excited to get into it, and it's going to be such a good episode. So, gang, get out your pens and your pads, and let's start game planning to dominate in our Dynasty startups. Planners, not only is today's guest one of the best dynasty minds in the industry, but he makes the perfect combination of informational and hilariously entertaining content. You have heard him, you've heard today's guest on the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, the Dynasty Show on RotoWire, and the Dynasty Hour on Sirius XM. Not many can deliver like this man on and off the camera. He is also an FSWA short form video finalist each of the last 2 years. Everyone, give it up for my man Alan Seslowski.
After that intro, you say my name wrong. Aaron? Aaron, I can't believe this.
Oh my God. That's the literal definition of fumbling on the goal line.
Terrible. No, I'm only kidding around. I'm only kidding there, Marvin.
Did I say Aaron? I am so bad.
It's all right,
Marvin. I've talked to you now for 2 hours.
All right, listen, Marvin Kiwoom.
Oh my God!
Oh wait!
Live that down.
Yeah.
Oh
terrible
I'll
intro.
Hit that post.
I want that on there. I just want to show everyone the show how upset I am.
Oh my lips! I can't believe I said that.
That's all right. It's okay. I've been called Alex. I've been called Aaron. But anyway, I appreciate being here, man. On the game plan. The reason I like your podcast so much because like I said, I'm an appointment listener. My podcast list grows every week, and this one's been on there. I like how you guys really not just digging in on the player stats. But anytime you're talking about on how to actually do the things in Dynasty, in fantasy football, because so many times you hear people say, oh, trade back. Oh, it's like, no, I've sometimes questioned whether these people actually play in real leagues. So I appreciate how you guys really dig into the details on how to execute this high-level strategy stuff.
Really appreciate that, Aaron. All right.
All right, Marvin.
Oh, God, I can't believe I did that. What an all-time fumble.
It's okay.
Here on the game plan. But
okay.
Hey, at least
I hate you. It's okay.
A memorable moment. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came on for your one and only time in the game plan because you'll probably tell me to piss off every time I ask you again.
Never.
But no, Alan, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on. I do like, however, to surprise my guests with a couple of questions before we dive into the day's topic. So how long have you been playing fantasy football? And then go ahead and describe your fantasy management style.
Yeah, I resisted fantasy for a long time back in the early 2000s, and then finally I was dragged into a fantasy basketball league, so around 2005 or so. But like anyone that's listening to your podcast, immediately became addicted, made all of the usual mistakes that people do, like I traded away a star for 3 crappy players. I was the fish in these leagues. In football, drafted Peyton Manning with the 3rd overall pick when everyone was waiting on quarterback. I've made every single mistake that you can possibly make, and I want anyone that's listening to it just know that happens. Traded 3 first-round picks for a post-peak David Johnson. I've done everything. So my style though is always win now. I never productive struggle, or as I call the win never strategy.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Because everyone, especially in dynasty leagues, if in any given league, and this, there's 3 people aren't competing, right? They're playing for next year, or they never think they have a win now team. So you start off competing against 7 people, and by week 4 you're competing against 4 people or 5 people. So it's always win now.
I'm with you there. We call it pedal to the metal here in the game plan. We like to keep the pedal to the metal. I know productive rebuilds, the productive struggle, those are viable. I've witnessed them work. But for every 2 people or 3 people or 4 people employing that strategy in your league, 2 of them are going to do that each and every year, and it will be the never win strategy.
Right. Well, you said 2 really good points about it. One, it takes precision and patience to win next year. And I don't have the stomach for that. Like, I can't sit there and get my ass kicked every week in anything. Like, if I'm playing pickup basketball or is that, like, I just can't. I'm going to start like cheating, like stepping on people's toes and, and illegally boxing them out or something. Right. But I just don't have the patience to do it every week, to wait till next year. So I'm going to always acquire these distressed assets. Last year, it was Keenan Allen and Mike Evans. This year, it's, maybe DeAndre Hopkins has a little more buzz, but I'm willing to give up my first round pick and get like 4 guys that I have no business getting that are just older on someone else's roster. So it's always win now, because in fantasy football, half the league makes the playoffs, and then you just have to have a little bit of variance on your side for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it happens every single year where a team can get hot in the fantasy playoffs. We always call the first round picks for the win now teams fun coupons here in the game plan, in reference to Wolf of Wall Street. Throw those fun coupons out there and get into it. But today we're going to be talking dynasty startup theories. We're going to dive a little bit more in navigating the early rounds. But before we do, let's hear from the Podfather as he talks about Player Profiler Premium.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on playerprofiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks, our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
We are back here at the game plan, and Bert Kreischer, is building up in the top. Hey, nice up here in Massachusetts. I imagine it's nice down in Florida.
Well, I'm completely nude right now, just so you know.
You're going full Rainn Wilson in the rocker on me?
Yeah, no, I'm a little stinky though, so I'm gonna put my shirt back on. I took it off. It's what happened was I was just changing my shirt, and I got caught with. I was like, I'll just leave it off for a second here. That really wasn't intentional, other than I was changing my shirt because I have the Player Profiler shirt on, but it's a little stinky because I wear it a lot. So hang on one sec, I'm gonna change it over. Hang on.
Clip it.
But I can still go bottomless, which I am.
Is it weird that I kind of prefer with this pop top, Alan? I mean,
should we both go completely? The first naked podcast ever. Well, I'll use it as my Grindr photo.
Oh my! Yeah. I mean, listen. There have been worse ideas than going with a naked pot right now.
I'm telling you, I wish I was gay. I really do. I really do, because you know how guys think, and are you going to admit on this podcast that you wish you were gay too?
See, I got a wife and 3 kids, so I don't think I can legally do that. But I would say it would be pretty dope.
It would be easier.
Fantasy trade with a little smooch with your
right,
boys.
but it'd just be easier. I'm obviously kidding. I'm obviously kidding. No, not that I don't wish I was gay, but it's
there's a lot of gay individuals out there being like, listen, buddy, I got a ball and chain just like you got a ball and chain, baby. It's called marriage. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you have a good sense of humor, and you're a good sport, Matty Kiwoom. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So the first question I have to ask, the big picture question, Alan, what's your large picture, your zoomed out dynasty startup theory?
Yeah, I mean, I said a little bit in our intro, but it's win now, win always be winning, right? I mean, of course, there's exceptions to the rule, but I mean, if you look at the redraft rankings and you look at the dynasty rankings, the guys who have the largest chasms in ADP, those are the players that are the extreme values. I mean, Derrick Henry this year, he's like a 6th, 7th round pick in dynasty startups that are Superflex, and he's a fringe first round pick. He goes a lot of times in the 2nd round, especially on underdog and stuff like that. But in your home league, he's going to go in the 1st round, right? Like he's going to go like pick 9. If you do like an industry quote league with experts that are running back centric, he's going to go like pick 11 or something like that. So I'm always trying to acquire those type of players that go early in redraft and late in dynasty, because let's face it, these dynasty leagues, if we had assurances they were going to last forever, that's one thing. But it's like the life of an NFL player, right, Matty? These things last 3.5, 5.5 years. You got to win.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, talk to the guys in your league that haven't won, and you've been around for 12 years as a league. You know, we all did. You watch the league on FX?
Of course,
great show. You know, the one of the through line jokes was Steven Azizi just couldn't take it down. He never got the Sheba Bowl. And if that's you in your league, I mean, enough is enough. Let's stop worrying about next year. Let's put the pedal to the metal. You know, try to win now. You sell some of those fun coupons at the top of the show when you're breaking down your style. You did kind of allude to some of the mistakes you've made. So that's really helped shape and evolve your game plan. Feet to the fire, having to battle the wolves. That's the best way to learn, right? Yeah. That's how we all kind of did.
What do you, I mean, in the startup, do you go in with obviously in Superflex, everybody knows you want to try to get an elite quarterback, and then there's a point in the first round where the 2 receivers in Bijan are going to come off the board. I mean, yeah, it's, we've been in these drafts, but let's get out of those first couple rounds. Are you a win now player, or are you like, hey, I don't want to go too crazy on the older guys. I want to, kind of middle of the road. What do you think is the best approach? Because I've had pretty good luck doing with what I'm doing, but I'm open to being like, some of these guys, they die. These teams, they die quickly as well. There is a downside.
Oh, so in my opinion, I think more often than not, your first 3 picks are they're both. I mean, they're good players. They're young players. So you can kind of have that flexibility to see where you want to pivot. When do you make that decision? And there are some selections where you have to make those choices. And when I make those choices, like, we did the Sonic Truth mock draft earlier this week for Dynasty Week. And there was a moment there where Christian McCaffrey got too good of a value. And in the team that I drafted him, we were kind of each drafting 2 teams is how it worked out. I was looking at potentially a longer term build. But when you get the value of Christian McCaffrey, that's the pick you make. And now you're like, okay, we're going 90 miles an hour. We're going 100 miles an hour down the highway because it doesn't make sense to take this player early and then mortgage it later with future assets. So
it's
those
funny,
pivotal picks make a difference.
Yeah, it's funny that Christian McCaffrey is viewed as a win now only piece, right? And he is. I mean, but isn't he? I mean, he's going to be 27 years old. We've seen that he has the type of game that will last. Why can't he be fantasy relevant for 4 more seasons? And I know that would be like unprecedented for a running back, but isn't he the exact type of player that can be win now and win for a couple more seasons? Does he have, I guess, a little bit more air in him than we typically think of running backs? Or is this one of those things where if you look back at the running back rankings from 3 seasons ago, it's like Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, or whatever it was, and I'm just laughing because none of them are in the league anymore.
Of course. And now, so I've kind of formulated this rule in my head. I call it the Todd Gurley rule, because when he was at the height of his power, it seemed to go away as fast as it came. So if it could happen to a prospect like Gurley, because, if you're new to Dynasty or new to fantasy, you may not remember how much hype he had. Remember the Bijan hype? That was Todd Gurley. That was Gurley. I mean, he had that hype coming out of Georgia. So if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. But
the only problem with the Gurley, though, is didn't he come in, like, when they drafted him, they knew he was a ticking time bomb with his knees.
He had an issue with his knee. But the thing about McCaffrey specifically is he's already become his own rule, because he missed those 2 seasons, and we've never seen a running back of his caliber basically be absent for a season and a half, to come back and just be exactly what he is, which is the running back with the highest ceiling in all of fantasy football. And the thing about startups right now, and in dynasty startups, if you're like us and you want to win right away, you could come away easily with a build of Lamar Jackson, a 2nd-round pick, and Christian McCaffrey. And that's something you couldn't dream of just 2 seasons ago. And I still believe that Lamar Jackson probably has the highest ceiling of any quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey undoubtedly has the highest ceiling of any running back. So, I mean, we're talking about massive upside here in your first 3 rounds. But there's a couple other guys I wanted to ask you about these pivot selections. So McCaffrey versus Walker seemed to be one for me in my startups in rounds 2 or 3. Is that a decision you make, or you go McCaffrey every time there?
Yeah, it was interesting that what happened, because before the NFL draft, I had Ken Walker as my RB1, and not because he was like this typical RB1. I mean, I don't even want to use the LaDainian Tomlinson as an example, but like even Jonathan Taylor was RB1 one year. There's usually like this 1 or 2 players that you're like, okay, this is the guy that's going to win you the league if he stays healthy, right? That's usually whereas Ken Walker was just like, all right, he's the best, youngest guy of all these damaged assets. And now,
Right.
they draft Zach Charbonnet, and you're not as excited about him, which just shows that he had no staying power anyway. So when you talk about Christian McCaffrey's probably the better dynasty asset, one, because he's, for all the reasons, produced now, produced later, and Ken Walker, it's like all the things that we liked about him, with the one thing, which is where he had the projected volume to himself. I don't care if you think Zach Charbonnet is not going to be, a good player in the NFL. That's no longer in play. There's a lot of doubt there. So Walker might have better trade value at some point this year, because getting young running backs is nearly impossible in Dynasty. But I think that and I'm not a Christian McCaffrey guy, but I think the sober view is that that's a guy that you'd probably rather have on your team.
And it's one of those selections that if you don't have to make the trade, you don't make this pick, but your league mate does. That's kind of a tell, I would guess, for most startups, right, Alan? All right, if they went McCaffrey, they're probably looking to sell their first round pick next year. They're going to take 2 10s to get an 8. They're going to do those type of things where they're going to try to hyperinflate those or hyper produce those studs at the top of the draft. Whereas if they go Walker over Christian McCaffrey, then you're like, okay, do you want my first round pick for XYZ? Do you want my 8-9 for your 7? All those type of things. So these are indicators. There's 2 more that I want to kind of just throw out there.
I want to ask you that. Is that, are those guys close in the draft? In the drafts that I'm seeing now, post NFL draft, I'm seeing Walker go a little bit later. The guy that's neck and neck with McCaffrey is Barkley. I'm curious, just which one of those 2 guys, because I can't figure out which one's the better dynasty asset.
So yeah, definitely. So I would say I'm going McCaffrey over Barkley. Because I think that a lot of the red flags are similar. The reason why I picked Ken Walker for this particular exercise is because it truly illuminates the paths, where Barkley and McCaffrey are kind of 2 heads of the same coin. But in terms of ADP, that's the decision. It's not McCaffrey and Walker. Walker has slipped. It is Barkley and McCaffrey, and I'm going McCaffrey. What about you?
What you're saying, though, is the time that you have to draft McCaffrey, it's am I taking McCaffrey or Devontae Smith? I'm taking a different position. Whereas, so if you take the wide receiver there, then the next time it comes around, you're taking Ken Walker, because that's part of that build.
Right.
So that's what you're saying.
Right.
Which avenue am I taking?
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, so in what I just explained to you is I'm taking McCaffrey because I'm trying to win now. But I also think that there's some, like you talked about, that there's wide receivers that fit the young and productive now model as well. And that's what I love about Dynasty. Everyone thinks they have it figured out. Anyone that tells you they have it figured out is, do not listen to them. Do not listen. They could tell you this is the way they do it, but there is no right answer. And if it was, you would have a guy that wins Dynasty leagues 5-6 years in a row. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Not in the good leagues. I mean, the leagues with a few sharps, and I'm not talking about industry leagues. My home league's very sharp. I mean, we have a number of guys that know what they're doing. We've all listened to shows long before I started doing content. So it's hard to win in Dynasty. So winning now, definitely it should be taken up. So you talk about how hard it is. So I want to ask you this question, Alan. When you go into startups, do you have multiple draft plans, or are you like a smooth jazz band where you just kind of improv and go with the flow?
Yeah, I mean, fantasy football cliches are funny, but they ring true for a reason. Draft for talent, fill positions with trades, right? So you want to get. I always have this plan that I want to draft all these young wide receivers, but I never do it, because the time that you get Chase or Jefferson, I want a quarterback, right? Or if I always find myself, I'm like, can I really take this young wide receiver? Can I really take George Pickens over DeAndre Hopkins? Can I really, in my mind, do that when I need a wide receiver that's going to produce? And I don't suffer from sexy roster syndrome like a lot of Dynasty players do. Where there was a poll that was put up that has been circulated around Dynasty Twitter, and it was, what's your favorite part about Dynasty fantasy football? And even though it was the leading vote getter, it was only 36% said winning. Another 30% said trading. Another percentage said getting rookie picks. Again, I think to answer your question directly, I have these plans of getting this really cool roster, but at the end of the day, I'm always taking the guy that's going to score fantasy points. So my plan, again, coming back to what we said, is get these guys that have age and already proven production, and then take the distressed guys that are old, the Keenan Allen types, Last year it was Leonard Fournette, the running back position. It might be Joe Mixon this year that are going to get me fantasy points. And then if it doesn't go well, these guys are always going to be tradable assets to the teams that are in the playoffs anyway. You're going to be able to get at least 75 cents on the dollar back, where, dynasty players, they want $1.10 on every asset no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I'm willing to lose trades just to cash out before it goes to zero.
If you win, this has always been my philosophy. If you win the championship, it's worth the overpay. It just is. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to have fun. We're trying to compete here. I understand the portfolio dynamic. I understand how a lot of dynasty gamers use those analogies to finance and stuff in terms of benefiting and profiting and getting gains and all these things. But I want to win, baby. Like Al Davis said, win, baby, win.
Right. And you don't need to win the league, which is great. That's the ultimate goal. But a lot of leagues have like structured payouts where second place, third place, like at least you're getting like a little bit more than your money back. I mean, you're in, a dozen or so leagues. And then when you add redraft in, I'm sure it's even more and more. And then like I'm in 40 leagues. I have my league safe account. And I never want to like keep adding to that. So if I'm breaking even or 2xing my money in the league, that pays for like 4 leagues. My whole idea is like, don't put in more money, just keep it going. So
keep the fun times rolling.
Keep your floor high, and it's because rebuilding is tough, man. So you asked about like, do I have a specific philosophy? It's just get the guys that have a combination of market value, of real actual fantasy value, but only in Dynasty Fantasy Football are you faced with decisions like in the 4th round, Christian Watson or Cooper Kupp. Like that's a Dynasty decision that you don't make in redraft.
Yeah, and I'm looking at one of my startup lineups here that I'm actually in the middle of, and it's riddled with what you're saying in terms of I wanted the sexy, young, fun. Here, Twitter, look at my roster. Look at all these young, fun guys. And then I look at it. There's Josh Jacobs. There's Stephon Diggs, Najee Harris. There's Aaron Jones. There's Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Rodgers. When the value ends up just getting there, it's like, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll take Dalvin Cook because Dalvin's going to be good. Let's face it, he's still good. Mixon is still good.
Where do you think is Dalvin Cook's best landing spot outcome with likely outcome?
I think it's Miami. I know it's a little on the nose, but he fits well there. And I think what I like about Dalvin going there is I don't think it necessarily blots out Devon Achane. I think they kind of complement each other at this stage of Dalvin's career. Right. But he also has that, maybe he does get that second win going to a new franchise. Miami, he played at Florida State. There's going to be that extra juice going to play for the Dolphins. And I think that just ends up being his smash spot in all accounts.
So what happens there? Okay, so let's say that happens. Dalvin is now the, quote, lead runner. Achane is the rookie learning how to become the change of pace. And then Mostert or Jeff Wilson are the third guy, and the other guy's either cut or practice squad or something like that. That's how you see it. Okay. Yeah, because it's perceived as like this big mess, but Dalvin cleans up that mess pretty quick.
Yeah, wouldn't you say that for guys like Dalvin? I know he's past the age apex. I know we've seen a dip in his efficiency metrics. He's still Dalvin Cook. He's still going to demand a contract. That's what he's about. And I think he's that type of guy that can level any type of mess.
He was RB what last year? Don't look. I'm sure maybe you know it offhand. RB what? Final rankings PPR.
I'm not looking at it. Final rankings, I'd say RB7.
He was RB8. You got it. RB9 and some scoring RB7 and others. So that's what I'm saying. Now, again, RB9 doesn't help you as much as wide receiver 14. Like wide receiver 14 is more valuable sometimes but Dalvin Cook still has the upside. Yeah, no, I like that call there. I was going to say if the worst spot, I'll give you the worst spot, I think is this talk that, you mentioned the Jets would be brutal.
Oh, my Atlanta.
Yeah.
The Jets would be awful.
Yeah, the Jets
Alan, so let's just say news alert goes off. Dalvin signs a 1-year contract to go play with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Is that a full stay away? Is there a strategy to navigate those waters?
Now, you often say that the ADP really measures the value of these guys, and you don't hate the players, hate ADPs. His ADP would fall so it would just tank that he would be someone that's interesting because we've talked about on the RotoWire podcast with you that we don't like any of the Jets to take over the backfield. At least we know that Dalvin Cook in any committee would be the lead runner. And in this specific case, until Breece Hall got back up to speed, I think Dalvin Cook, I'm interested in him no matter where he goes. I'm just trying to think like let's say he went to the Colts, right? Which is not even anyone else talking about that. That's a situation where you're like, okay, this is bad because he's got a young durable back. But yeah, I mean, I've been staying away in the NFFC. He goes in like the 3rd, 4th round. I think that's too rich, but maybe we'll both end up looking foolish.
Yeah, in this startup I'm referencing 12th round. I mean, and if he goes to the Jets, we're talking post 15. I'm thinking that's a 3-round slip if I ever heard one go into play in that situation.
That's Superflex, right? That was Superflex.
And this is a Superflex, yeah. So we are talking Superflex Dynasty theories here. You talk about ADP, but what about the number 1 pick in Dynasty startups? Who's your 101? Is it Mahomes, Superflex, or is it Jalen Hurts?
Oh, I mean, it's Mahomes, right? I mean, it's Jalen. In order to be the number 1 pick in a Dynasty Superflex draft, you have to see it for 3 seasons, right? Until you are like the cemented number. Last year for Mahomes was a down season, and he was QB6. Like that's his floor, right? Like not last season, the season before when he was
his down season. It's Patrick Mahomes. You're talking about down seasons, aren't quarterback
right?
6.
It was quarterback 6, right? And then last year in startups, Justin Herbert was getting drafted over him. Again, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts is going to take a Justin Herbert regression step, but okay, listen, Jalen Hurts. If you want to take him number 1, I get it. He's got a few years of youth, but Patrick Mahomes, doesn't he project as the kind of guy that's going to play? Look, if Kirk Cousins is playing when he's 35 years old, Patrick Mahomes should be playing until he's 39 years old at a high level, right? I mean,
100%.
Yeah, so I think that when you talk about combinations of floor and ceiling, and imagine if they actually get a wide receiver. Imagine Kadarius Toney pops. I mean, there's only upside from here. Like Mahomes is one of those players that's worth more than the draft pick. He's worth more than the 101, right? So you can't. He is, I think, the locked-in 101. The other day on our draft, Podfather took Jalen Hurts. I do not believe if we were in a $1,000 startup league that he would do that, but. There are people that were thinking about it, so it was good that he did it just to give people like the thought exercise. Is there any argument against him being the 101?
No. So, first I got to give a quick shout out to the greatest showman, Matt Kelly. I mean, that misdirect was all time. It was fantastic. I'm taking Jalen Hurts 101 in redraft, Superflex.
I don't know. No problem there.
But in Dynasty, I can't do that. Jalen Hurts is my second quarterback off the board. He is. But you mentioned something about Patrick Mahomes. If you have the 102, that's the guy you're trading up for. And you would pay whatever the cost to go from the 102 to the 101.
Would you give your first rounder the following year to move from 102 to 101?
Probably not, because I like Hurts enough, but I would to go for the 103 or the 104.
So 103
get out of that tier.
Josh Allen and your first rounder next year to Patrick Mahomes or whoever your 101 in Dynasty is. You would do it.
Yeah. Yep. At that point, I'm doing it because, like you mentioned about Mahomes, and this is we in Dynasty, or at least I do, and I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this. I like over the course of time, over the years, you yourself have to place these you draw these lines in the sand because now you have expectations. Okay, we talked about McCaffrey. We drew the line in the sand. Nobody comes back from this. He came back from this, so we have to throw away everything that we thought. Mahomes last year, who was he throwing to, Alan? I mean, he had Kelsey, who's maybe the greatest tight end of the generation, him or Gronk. After that, I mean, MVS, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman. I mean, they didn't really have a laundry list of stud receivers, and he went out there and just casually threw for 5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns.
Yeah, the year that they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire with that last pick, was that the same year T. Higgins was passed over?
That was the year T. Higgins went 3 picks later.
Right. Yeah, you got to wonder, though. It's like they've had opportunities to get these elite receivers, and they keep like acquiring these Marquez Valdez-Scantling types. What the heck is the problem here? Because, and you talked about Kelsey. I mean, he out in tight end premium, just 1.5, he outproduced Justin Jefferson last year. So they really do have a number 1 wide receiver.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and most teams don't have a tight end like that ever. Like you just said, it's like he's such in a class by himself.
He's so good.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying is, what if they even add like a B- at receiver, and what if Kadarius Toney's a B+, right? Yeah, I mean 101. I think the the 101 conversation in non-Superflex is more interesting than people think. It's not as chalky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually was in a 1 QB startup, and Mahomes was, I think, 5th. And then I went in and I took Hurts 8th. So I don't have a problem taking a quarterback in round 1. So if that being my philosophy, if I had the 101, Patrick Mahomes is certainly in play.
Yeah, there was Theo showed me a letter that one of the people that are a loyal fan of the Sonic Truth podcast wrote, and they had a real issue with me saying that quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks, can go in round 1 of a single quarterback league. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm not sure I would do it, but I believe that it's a viable strategy because what's the difference if you take Mahomes at pick 9 or pick 17, whatever the wraparound is, right? You're still going to get a good player, and it's one of the few guys that makes a difference. Who would be your 101 in a non-Superflex startup? Like if you have that first pick.
I'm taking Jefferson. I'm in the Jefferson camp.
Yeah.
So that was actually one of the questions that I had for you today is after all, in Superflex startups, we're talking about obviously quarterbacks anywhere, 8 of them maybe off the board. But when do Chase, Jefferson, and Bijan come into play? And of those 3, who are you taking? Who's your guy? I'm saying Jefferson.
In a
Superflex.
non-Superflex.
Superflex. So let's say the quarterbacks are coming off the board.
Right at the top.
Where do they come into play?
All right, so there's 9 quarterbacks that you just discussed, and then there's Chase, Jefferson, and Bijan, right? Those are the chalk picks, and so I guess after those 9 are off the board, now I even would put Deshaun Watson in that tier. So now I'm talking about a 10th quarterback. When Deshaun Watson, he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback every single year that he was a starter. Now you can kind of tell yourself a story why he fell off last year, right? I mean, coming back from adversity, his fault. And but the other thing that I think about with Deshaun Watson is the weather situation. They have a lot of bad weather games in Cleveland, so that could be a problem too. So the good news is you don't have to take Deshaun Watson in that tier. So I think you named. Let's go through those quarterbacks. It's the top 3 that you have: Mahomes, Hurts, and Josh Allen, right? And then the next tier is Burrow, Herbert, and
Lamar,
Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. Right. So I think that I would take Jefferson or Chase or Bijan ahead of Fields. Only because I'm worried, and not that I don't like Justin Fields, but I think that he's the cut point that he belongs in the first round. But I can't say for certain that he's going to be an NFL starter in 3 years from now, whereas all the other guys we named, I can say with absolute certainty those guys are NFL starters in 3 seasons from now.
You nailed it. That's exactly my thoughts. Because Trevor Lawrence, even if he doesn't hit that ceiling, he's a starter. He's a guy that can help you win in fantasy where, like you said, if Fields stinks this year, they got him, DJ Moore. If they're facing a decision where they could get May or Caleb Williams, they're probably going to take it a year removed from passing on the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud.
Right. And that's, that would be like the ultimate for them. What if they can get their money back, like 2 first-round pick, or sorry, a first-round pick plus to like a team like Washington, where they, they get more picks and they can bring in a stopgap guy like an Andy Dalton-esque guy just to right the ship. Like there's a lot of paths where that can go wrong. Now that's why I said Deshaun Watson, Matty, belongs in this tier because no matter what, for better or for worse, Deshaun Watson is 4 more years of locked-in guaranteed money. So we could say for sure that at least 3 seasons he's locked in. That's why I believe he belongs in that tier, even though you don't have to take him there.
So to put a pin on that last, are you taking Jefferson, Chase, or Bijan first non-quarterback?
I like starting with Bijan, although I totally understand the argument for Jefferson and Chase, the receivers. But Bijan is in a very unique situation where he also can project longer than most running backs because rookie on a rookie contract, top 10 pedigree. Barkley's was RB1 his rookie year.
Yeah, he was
Zeke was RB2 or 3 his rookie year. I think Bijan fits in there. So I like starting with a running back because I like the receivers I can get later.
Good call there. And people like to remember Zeke now. Zeke in his early stages was that guy. He was an absolute monster running back. So getting a running back, this is wide receiver season. August, September becomes running back season because running backs, those are the guys that win. Chaos. They're the guys that win you with a redraft dynasty when you're trying to win fantasy games. It always ends up being running backs.
Yeah, the common pushback is, oh, running backs get hurt. Okay, fine, but they're also the guys that win you the leagues too. So when you look at, like for example, even in underdog, where people just pull down their pants for wide receivers, right? Pat Kareem,
much like you have for the game plan.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a company guy here. I'm trying to help you out, get some ratings, you know. But Pat Kareem, who won the Best Ball Mania, he drafted in June. Most people say don't draft in June, draft in August, right? And he also, his first two picks were Eckler and Barkley, and he won the whole
Smash
thing.
mode, yep.
Yeah, so the running backs are what got it for him. So.
I made a run in Scott Fish. I was in the semis of that big tournament, and it was because I was not afraid to take Barkley. I was okay. Everyone was shading the running backs in round 3, round 2, and I said, screw it. There's Barkley right there. Boom. You know, a lot of Derrick Henry teams made it far for that same reason. You talk about Deshaun Watson. I want to tie this into a question I had for you, Alan. So, like, do you believe in dynasty startups that managers should get aggressive for their second QB? And I put together a few guys for round 2 and 3: Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson. So let's start with Watson because you believe he should be even higher than these other guys. So let's talk about Watson.
Yeah, the best thing to do is buy the dip on proven elite players, right? I mean, Deshaun Watson, when he had his scandal, I had people that tried pulling this nonsense saying, oh, morally they couldn't have him on their roster. What? I'll draft Saddam Hussein if he's going to give me fantasy points. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you kidding me? You're not drafting the player. You're drafting the player's stats, right? Like,
people have Tyreek Hill, right? Didn't he break his kid's arm? Like,
I mean,
there's some questionable actions that have been taken in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's an old joke. It's like, oh, back in the day, you remember like 10 years ago in fantasy football, like when weed was considered like the ultimate sin? I always buy the weed guy, right?
Always buy, yeah.
Yeah, Randy Moss was the weed guy, or you know, Martavis Bryant back in the day, and that didn't pan out. But yeah, so getting your elite second QB, obviously you want to do that, and especially when they're distressed. Dak is distressed a little bit here, right? I mean, he's not considered in that elite tier, but you know, has plenty of upside. So. I don't think that in our draft the other day, you went a little bit earlier on Kirk Cousins in the Dynasty League. I'm interested to hear why, because Kirk Cousins, there's a couple things when you go early quarterback, and every Superflex market is different, Matty, right? Like some leagues, they're not going to value the quarterback if they haven't played a lot of Superflex. Others are going to just go totally ham for it. And Kirk Cousins doesn't have that contract insulation that, in my mind, I mean, you know, next year he's going to get a job, but he's kind of going to be a free agent on the open market sooner than later. So that's why I would not put him in that tier. So, but what is it about Cousins? Because you mentioned him again today. There's someone that you think is worthy of a round 2 or round 3 pick. And by the way, Theo, in our high stakes draft, I'm in one with him. It was a $250 entry. I guess that's not high stakes to Theo. That's pocket change.
Yeah.
But he took Cousins in the early third as well. So both of you saying it now has me thinking, because I was always thinking him is like a 4th or 5th round Superflex pick.
So the Cousins thing for me is a win now mindset. It's 2023 because we don't know exactly what will happen in 24. I think he's good enough though that he should warrant some respect on the open market in terms of someone luring him in with weapons, a chance to win, that whole stuff. So even if he were to leave the Vikings, which I don't think is a guarantee, they keep being linked to other quarterbacks, but they haven't done a damn thing to bring a quarterback in. So he could still be there. He's only 34 years old, so he could get 4 more years of good production. And we're just a year removed from Kevin O'Connell getting the head coaching job at Minnesota, where we're like, strap in, Matthew Stafford 2021 will be Kirk Cousins in 2022. And he didn't ball out to that level exactly, but he was still just under 20 points a game, QB 11 on a points per game basis, QB 7 overall. And this, I think, is his best set of weapons that he's had in terms of pass catching. I mean, I like Thielen. Thielen was great, but Addison is an absolute upgrade at this stage. TJ Hawkinson, not super efficient, volume guy, beast, absolute, dominator at the tight end position. And then, of course, Jefferson, the best wide receiver, in the NFL, in my opinion, and can only really be discussed with one other. So he's in a class of 2 at the worst. So I think that Kirk Cousins has some ceiling. And I think QB7, QB10 is absolutely in play. And when we just rattled off 8 or 9 in the first round, right then he's back in the conversation. Now, what I couldn't do in our mock that I do typically do is try to trade back. I've done that a ton in my startups because in those second rounds, I mean, I've traded from let's say the 210 to the 3-7 and gotten a first round pick to do that. And then I still take Cousins.
Yeah, the Cousins, to me, again, everything you're saying, it just makes too much sense. I just don't know. Like, when I look at someone like Geno Smith, for example, right? Like, Geno Smith has got one, if you're talking about best weapons, he's got to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks with elite weapons when you talk about
His weapons are crazy this year.
Right. And I mean, the Seattle didn't do much either to address quarterback, and Geno's only 32. So, and Geno goes 5 rounds later. So it's not like, hey, don't draft Kirk Cousins, but I don't see a lot of daylight between those guys. And, you know, there is a good amount of daylight. There is a gap between the position players in round 2 or round 3 and in round 5, round 6. So that is why I've been fading Kirk Cousins, but you know, you're making a lot of sense here. It's like, win now. Let's say you got Jefferson in the first round, right? If you took him at pick 6, I know people like stacking, and there is a lot of merit to that. So you're making me think here should be pushed up. So your original question was about how to attack the after the elite quarterbacks are off. Deshaun Watson, and if you like Dak Prescott, I think those guys belong in that conversation. But other than that, it's similar to the fantasy football redraft philosophy is like hero running back. I like to get my hero quarterback and then just backfill it with a lot of like Daniel Jones types, Kenny Pickett, and just rotate through. Because just understand though, when you're in a Superflex draft or an existing league, and Matty knows this, try buying a quarterback in Superflex, ain't happening.
And you got to give up a quarterback. That's really just how it goes.
The quarterbacks you can buy in Superflex right now are like Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill, and by the way, I'm interested in those players on my roster, but that's what you're doing. You're not going to be able to get QB 16. It's just not happening because someone else needs them. You're not try buying Derek Carr in Superflex without giving up a quarterback. You're giving up like an elite, like a running back 9, running back 7 to get him.
Real contributors. I mean, and you're running out of time to buy Sam Howell, Mac Jones even. Right. Jordan Love, that ship has sailed. You ain't buying Jordan Love anymore.
I have a Jordan Love trade that just came up a month or 2 ago. Who would you rather? I'm not going to tell you which side I was on.
Okay.
Just Jordan Love or Trey Lance. Now, a pick was exchanged. I want you to see which side the pick was on. It was a second-round pick. So one of these quarterbacks, I traded either Love for Lance, I'm not telling you which side, and a second-round pick. So which one would you prefer, and where do you believe the pick belongs to equalize this trade?
When did this trade happen?
2 months ago. 2
months ago. So I think that you got Jordan. I think you did because you're the smart guy. You got Love and the second.
I did. What a wow. So, but is today, which side of that trade do you want to be on? Now, forget the pick.
I was on record maybe even a month and a half ago saying I thought Jordan Love was better than Trey Lance in Dynasty.
It doesn't matter if he's better, though, right? He has the job. The other guy doesn't now.
Right, we're just getting more affirmations for Jordan Love. Am I a little nervous? Yeah, that contract extension thing, they didn't just pick up the 5th-year option. They kind of whittled it down to make it more favorable for both, not his side, but certainly the Green Bay Packers side and the team building overall aspect of it. So I am that after that action, I kind of tempered expectations a tad because I was full gun-ho on Jordan Love because I love the weapons. I believe in the offensive philosophy of Matt LaFleur. The way he was able to slow the game down in Green Bay, I think that'd be great for a guy like Jordan Love. He's been learning behind Aaron Rodgers, and even if Aaron Rodgers is a whack job taking ayahuasca at the 50-yard line, you're probably going to learn a thing or two if you're Jordan Love. And, the podfather Matt Kelly was down in Mobile during his Senior Bowl and said he had probably the second best arm after Justin Herbert down there. So
I'm not going to let you sit here and defame Aaron Rodgers for taking ayahuasca. Real man snorts lines in between huddles, right? I mean, come on. Yeah,
they decorate it in the 50 and just, I tripped.
Exactly. Just, blast a big rail before a game-winning drive. Now, you're right, though, that both guys are not guaranteed to be the starter next year. So we have to, and whatever you thought about Jordan Love, I hear the pushback on Jordan Love is, I didn't like his college profiles over all these things, but he's not the same player he was 3 years ago, for better or for worse, right? He's
right, exactly.
I mean, if you've been at a company for 3 years, you are not the same worker that you were when you first got there. You're just watching people, you're learning how the system works, you're comfortable. And both of these guys could be complete backup circuit next year, but one guy has the job, Jordan Love. The other guy is in a real battle. And if Brock Purdy was healthy, you could say that he'd be the underdog for the job, and Purdy would be the favorite.
if Purdy didn't hurt his elbow, and let's just say he gets his teeth kicked in against the Eagles, they kick the shit out of him in the NFC Championship, but he doesn't get hurt. I don't even think Trey Lance is on the 49ers, to be honest, and that probably would be better for us fantasy gamers. But that being true, and I think a lot of people would probably be on that side of things. How can you go in with any confidence on Trey Lance? But we are playing a proxy of another game, and because values can be so shifty, I am now back in on trying to buy Trey Lance because the value has gotten so low. But I mean, just 3-4 weeks ago, when the value was kind of on the rise, I was a complete sell for that reason.
Dude, Trey Lance is Bitcoin, right? Like
Yeah,
he's literally like he's 70,000. Oh shit, I gotta buy. Then he's down to like $1,000. I mean, now it's obviously Bitcoin stabilized a little bit, but Trey Lance is if you look at the cone chart, I mean, it's all over the place over the last 3 years.
And just like Bitcoin, because my brother's into Bitcoin, he's always trying to convince me to buy. I'm like, he's like, oh, it's gone down a little bit. Get it? I'm like, I want it to go to 0. He's like, why? I'm like, because then I'll buy a ton of it.
I mean, that's
where I want to get in.
Right. With volatile assets, you want to try to, buy low and, but that's what happens is my buddy was telling me, oh, I don't want Trey Lance anymore. I'm like, you need to run into the burning building to make a profit on these guys.
For sure. Yeah. Because this is the chance to steal a good line from the Wolf of Wall Street. Sometimes I'm just better at spending other people's money. So if you want to give me an asset for a sunk cost, I might do a little bit better with that asset than you will. Yeah. But Alan, we're talking about dynasty startups here. I want to ask you about trading. Do you typically make a lot of trades in your dynasty startups?
Not during the startup itself.
During the actual startup, yeah.
Not a lot, but I do make trades. Like I would say, this year I've done 4 startups, and I would say in one of them I made 0 trades. It was just a crowd that didn't want to. Everyone wanted to screw you, and they wanted it. And I would say in a couple of them, it was not. Yes, I did some move ups, some move backs. I am open to trading, and trading etiquette. Obviously, we could do a whole podcast on that. But yeah. I do like trading back like everyone else. But now that everyone wants to trade back in startups, I'm now starting to trade up because I can get better deals trading up than I used to 2 years ago. And what I mean by that is that everyone pick is on the block. Yeah. So if I'm trying to move up from pick 12 or 11 to pick 6 to get in that big 6 quarterbacks, I'm already negotiating with pick 5 and pick 6. So I think there's actually a market inefficiency on trading up now. Now you're still going to seed value, but not as much as you were a year ago.
Yeah, and we actually, I was on the latest episode of RotoWire. First of all, thank you for having me on. But we talked about trade etiquette.
We do charity work every once in a while.
You got to get the bums on to make the other guys look even better. But we talked about trade etiquette. So if you want to kind of hear a little bit about a philosophy, go check out the RotoWire's latest episode with Alan and myself. But when it comes to trades, I like to do 2 things. And I call it either the John Wick or the Ninja. The John Wick is I throw my first round on the block, guns blazing. I don't care if you do it. I'm just trying to gather information. Because what I end up getting from doing that is if everyone throws their pick on the block, then everyone wants to trade back. Well, then your boy's going to move up. Because now, if everyone's trying to move back, I'll oblige somebody, and I will find a good deal. I will move right on up. And if nobody puts their thing on their pick on the block, now I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe people are at least thinking about staying put, potentially moving up. It gets me some information. The other approach is the ninja approach, where I'll start DMing and just say, what am I looking to do here? What are you looking to do here? Because then maybe you can get a little bit more out of that if you get that kind of that you get. If they're receiving your they're receptive to what you're doing, they might say, if he falls to me, I'd like to go either one of these wide receivers over Trevor Lawrence. So you could potentially get these nuggets of information. But in leagues where I don't know people and how they play, those are the 2 approaches I do to try to stir shit up, to try to gather information. Do you have any little secrets that you like to do that maybe you could share a little bit of it? I don't want you to give away all the tricks of the trade, but a little something you do here in the game plan?
I think that when you commit to being a content creator, you don't. The good ones don't
secrets
hold
out the
back.
window.
Yeah, the secrets out the window. You're okay.
I've lost out on many trades because they've listened to a show.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes you good at this. And I noticed that about you right away. You're not holding back. And as you see, I'm not holding back on anything as well. I have friends that content create and says, oh, I'm not going to discuss this guy or that, right. Or it doesn't work. You got to put it all out there. So tricks of the trade is, and some of this might seem obvious, but it's good to go over, like the X's and O's, the blocking and tackling of this stuff, is trade up and give value when it's the end of a tier, and trade back, obviously, when the tier is big, and everyone has their own tier. So let's say we were talking about Superflex quarterbacks, and the last quarterback that you're comfortable with is in a 2-year window that's going to be a really good top 12 guy is Jared Goff, right? That seems like last year it was Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, right? Now, Cousins is above the Mendoza line, Carr's below it. But this year it's Goff for me. So I'm willing to seed value to get the last guy in a tier. In wide receiver, I'm trying to think who the last wide receiver 2 type is, right? So I'm willing to trade into that tier. Same thing with running back. I know people don't like trading up for running backs, but because we talked about on the RotoWire podcast about just load up on backup running backs. So that is my number 1 tip. Trade up, seeding value when you're trading into the bottom of a tier, but when you're on the clock and you see that there's a large tier, that's when it's okay to explore trade outs. But if you can't trade out, just make a pick, because don't pass on a position. Tip number 2, don't pass on a position because you perceive the tier is so big, because by the time it whips around to you, sorry, I knocked the microphone
Literally
over.
whips around for you there.
By the time it whips around, that tier could be depleted anyway. So if you're looking at like a 6 or 8 wide receiver tier and you're on the clock, it's okay to make the pick, even though there's a lot of sameness if you can't trade it, because by the time it comes around, you could be 1, even 2 tiers lower. How about you? What's your number 1 tip for that, even if it's an obvious one for trading?
It's a little of what you just said. It's don't be afraid to go get that guy in a certain tier. And an example that I've seen now in some Superflex startups is, if the quarterback run has happened, even the secondary run is pretty much gone, and we're not really looking at much. So let's just say all of that, the quarterbacks are up, the receivers went up, and all of a sudden you had to decide between DK Metcalf, Austin Eckler. You went receiver. You go Metcalf. 3 picks go by and Eckler isn't taken. This is the time you get aggressive and you go get that guy, because the value is there. Overpaying is built into the value in which you're getting him on your team, because he shouldn't be there at a certain tier. And we were talking early in the show, this Superflex startup that I was in, I had no intentions to come away with a surplus of running back, but when Dalvin fell and Mixon fell and Aaron Jones fell, I just kept going back to the well, because and 2 of those guys I traded up to go get. I traded up for Mixon and up for Dalvin, because sometimes the disrespect goes far enough. And if you notice that with any different player, whether it be tight end, receiver, quarterback, however it is, if your guy that's at the end of a tier, you didn't choose that guy, even if you didn't choose him and you see him trickling down a handful of picks, go get him. Take 2 of those next upcoming picks and then move back and get something later. Just go get those guys, because that's how you win in fantasies, when you got a guy you shouldn't have, and now your team perceivably can put up more points than they were projected to.
Let me underline something that Matty Kiwoom just said. Pick swaps. That's how, you don't always have to add your second rounder or add your third rounder to picks. Definitely don't add your first rounder unless you're talking about a top 30 overall player.
Right.
And you should. I prefer to hold on when you talk about trading my second and thirds for in-season trading. If I need a spot start from Khalil Herbert, I'll give my third round pick if he's the clarified starter in season when I need him. But pick swaps, hey, my favorite pick swap, and some people don't like this, some people do. And if you have a trade partner that's on the opposite side of the draft from you, so say you're picking at 10 and they're picking at 2, this is the optimal trade partner for you. So you say, hey, let me take your pick in this round, and you can take the better pick in the next 2 rounds where I'm ahead of you. A lot of people will say, okay, all right, and I kind of like the player in the next round, and I'm getting an additional move up. So move ups over rookie picks is tip number 3 for me. And it's really your tip, but I'm just underlining what you said. But I'm now going to use it as my tip.
Alan, that's our tip, because that would be my next follow-up, is that I rarely leave a dynasty startup without my 1, 2, and 3. I even try to get a 1, 2, or 3 throughout the process, because I also think in dynasty startups you can extract future picks, which could end up being such a crazy value, because you might be getting the better player as you slide back and still get an additional pick. So I rarely leave without my future picks, because I want those fun coupons when I need to win.
Debunk or confirm this statement, okay? I'm going to give you a statement that I often hear in leagues. 5th round rookie picks and 4th round rookie picks are, quote, worthless. Debunk that statement or confirm it.
How do I confirm? See, I don't think that they're worthless. I will take them, but I also will give them away for a lottery ticket because that's what I believe that they are. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to debunk that by saying they're not worthless because James Robinson was a thing. They're not worthless because Austin Eckler has been a back-to-back RB2 on a season. You're talking about the bottom of the barrel players.
I meant rookie picks in Dynasty. Like if you're like, yeah, okay. So yeah, like when you're in a rookie draft, fourth and like, often like I'll offer someone these picks and, obviously that within context of a trade, and they'll say, oh, those fourth and fifth rounders are worthless. I don't want anything to do with them. So what is, I guess here's a better way to frame it. What is, cause I'm having trouble. I need to answer this question a lot. So I'm going to you again. I'm making you do the work for me.
I love it.
What is their utility in Dynasty?
I mean, their utility in Dynasty is really, it's what would you rather have? Do you want the liquidity and not carry a roster clogger? And in that way, they're not worthless. They mean something because they can be your placeholder instead of having, I can't remember now, we've been talking for a while, if that was on RotoWire or the gameplay in the Trent Sherfield. That's a roster
was
clogger.
that this year or last year? I don't remember. What podcast was it? What day is it? We were talking about, right. So you'd rather have the liquid pick versus having a wide receiver that you're almost never going to start. Yes, I think that's
right.
Agreed there.
Going into your rookie drafts, like I said, Austin Eckler was a late round rookie pick. James Robinson was a super late round rookie pick. So I would say in all fronts, they're not worthless. They may not carry a lot of value, and you might get laughed at if you add it into a trade. But I am also a big proponent if we're at a stalemate and we're at the goal line, throw in a fourth. Let's get it done. I'll take the extra thing. Why not?
So they're okay. Utility number one here is that they're throw-ins to make a deal happen. Agree there. And in 2023 rookie drafts, you're getting real NFL fourth round quarterbacks in the fourth round. Right. I had one rookie draft where I had 3 fourth round picks. Nobody wanted to give me their third next year to take these picks. So I was able to get Aiden O'Connell, Clayton Tune, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
There it is.
One of those guys has a chance to start twice, right? I mean, maybe in the
Tune might start 6 or 7 games this year.
Right, that's my point. So they're Brock Purdy style quarterbacks, right? Yep. Fourth round, day 3 quarterbacks.
Long shots.
Right. And if you have a taxi squad, people will say, oh, what's the point of a taxi squad? That is it. Because you can't hold third string quarterbacks, second string quarterbacks in Dynasty unless you really have these extra spots. So that would be the utility. And I think they're worth acquiring those picks if you could take multiple shots.
So I'm debunking that. I think they are worth something. So we're going to wrap up here in a second. But before we do, Alan, I do have one last question for you. We talked about Superflex strategies, how we like to go about big picture stuff, practical stuff. What is your perfect 3-round start in a Dynasty startup Superflex?
With like random pick, like 8 or something like that?
Let's give you, let's go in the middle. Let's go in the middle. But if you want to add, qualifiers where if I was in the beginning, if I was in the end, I do this, this, and this. But however you want to break it down, what's your perfect spot?
I mean, I'm not breaking any news here, but elite quarterback and then Deshaun Watson. That's round 1, too. Because Deshaun Watson, if I can't do that, I want Deshaun Watson in round 2. Whatever I need to do. If I pick at the pick 4 and I have Joe Burrow, I trade up in the second round and I'll give up I'll give value to get Deshaun Watson. As we've talked about, I believe he will be considered in that tier this time next year. So best start is elite quarterback, Deshaun Watson in round 2, and then your favorite wide receiver, Jonathan Taylor, in round 3.
Or Jonathan Taylor. Okay, right. Are you leaning Jonathan Taylor, or are you willing to take the Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, DK Metcalfs, that Christian Watsons, all that stuff? What are you taking there?
I prefer the 24-year-old wide receiver that has already shown something in the NFL over Taylor, although Taylor is probably a lock to outproduce those guys because I do, as we get deeper in the draft, I don't mind taking, the distressed guys like the Alexander Madisons, and there's a whole bunch of other Damian Pierce types, year running backs. Yeah. So I just because of scarcity drives value, I think that's it. So 2 quarterbacks and a 24-year-old wide receiver. And in round 4, you should be able to get an older producer. So I will not take Tyreek Hill in round 3. I will not take Stephon Diggs in round 3. And again, that's a dynasty thing. And, it's probably a foolish move. I've been in a startup where I took Christian Watson over Cooper Kupp. I could regret that, but it's a dynasty league that has staying power, and it's a large entry fee. So I want that combination of ceiling with longevity there.
And yeah, we talked about having a little bit of love for Jordan Love. So
Yep.
if you're going to have love for Love, you got to have love for Watson.
Answer that question too. What's your ideal three round startup? I have 3 first picks.
So I am with you with the 2 quarterbacks. I've just been in a number of dynasty or Superflex leagues where, you're just desperate for a quarterback. So I'm coming away with one of those top guys. If let's say I'm in the back end and I miss out on that initial run, I will try to trade out of Jefferson Chase in hopes to get 2 second-round picks or an additional first next year, and then I'll go Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott 2-3 or Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson. However that ends up playing out, I will do that. But let's just say, for the sake, I cannot trade out. I will go, with the one in the middle. I'll go, let's say Lamar, if he's the guy, or Herbert, whoever is the guy who falls at 107. I'll take him there. And then I will double tap quarterback because I don't like the second guess. So if it's Dak Prescott, if it's Kirk Cousins, if it's Deshaun Watson, I'm going back-to-back quarterback. And then in round 3, it's typically a receiver or sometimes Mark Andrews if he's there. If Kelsey's there, I'm taking him there. But that's not usually the case in those leagues. So I'll go Mark Andrews too.
I just want to add one footnote, and then I know we're running long, but there's no cheaper place to get a quarterback in Superflex than in the startup.
In the start, exactly.
They are the opposite of cars. The minute you drive a car off the lot, it decreases in value. The minute the Superflex startup is over, they increase in value. So get them in the startup. They go. It's impossible to get them. Daniel Jones goes in the 4th or 5th, the 3rd to 5th round. Let's call it 4th round of Superflex startups. You're not going to be able to get him for 2 first-round picks in most leagues. So that's what I'm saying. Immediately he goes up in value.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, actually, Derek Brown on the mock draft, he really opened my eyes to be more excited about Daniel Jones, to maybe put him in this tier that we talked about earlier of the Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, which also it kind of tells me I should probably trade back and grab one of those guys in that tier if I can. But yeah, Daniel Jones is in it. I do want to ask one question before we get out of here because he's really polarizing player in terms of his value. It caused a massive conversation on the last Sonic Truth mock draft. Kyler Murray, are you targeting him with a top 40-ish pick? What are your thoughts on Murray?
Yeah, I don't want Kyler Murray on my team. Not because I don't think he's good, just that I fading injury optimism in fantasy football will usually make you money. Now,
it's so surefire, yeah.
Right. Now, if he's falling into the 3rd round and you're doing like the QB horde or something like that, where you're going QB plus another, you're taking quarterbacks in 4 of the first 5 picks or 5 of the first 6 round, like that's a viable strategy, the QB horde. I think that there's a place for that. For example, I know that you referenced that podcast, and I have Kyler Murray. I tried trading pick 2 for him in a rookie draft, so that's Anthony Richardson.
Right.
Decline. I said, hey, I'll add my second. Decline. Kyler Murray, for Bryce Young, decline, right? I mean, I could not get rid of Kyler Murray. So what the play is with Kyler Murray is the minute they say he's coming back in week 12, or if he doesn't come, if it's next year, that's when, if you want to get out from Murray. So in a startup draft, I'm always trying to win. Kyler Murray is a good play for long term if you want to wait and get and win next year. But I don't have the stomach or the patience to win next year. I'm always winning now. I don't draft Breece Hall in startups, even though I know he's coming back, because I'm not willing to pay RB2 prices for him.
I don't have any Breece Hall that you mention it. And I do have Kyler. I did get up him in one of my startups in the end of the 2nd. And at that point, I didn't reach the pivot selection yet. So I was still kind of up in the air. I had Dak Prescott. I took Kyler Murray because those are 2 seemingly top 12 dynasty assets in Superflex. So I grabbed them. But then as the team kind of played out, I kept taking vets to win now. I traded up to make sure that I got Aaron Rodgers in the 8th round of the Superflex. So now I have Kyler Murray, and I will flip him the second we are done recording if I get an offer, because I think what I learned from doing that is you might have these pivot selections in your mind that's going to take you down one path or another, but straddling the line with a Kyler Murray is a dangerous game, because if I have to roster him now and sell him later, it's not going to present the similar value that I would have if I just taken Chris Olave, who went after him, Christian McCaffrey, who went after him, CJ Stroud, Kirk Cousins all went after him. If I had just taken that quarterback then, I wouldn't have to trade it for Rodgers in round 8, and I wouldn't already be looking to unload Murray before 4th of July.
And if you're in, 10 leagues, 12 leagues, 15 leagues, who the hell has time to do all this, right? If you're in 2 leagues, 3 leagues, sure. Okay, draft Kyler Murray, wait till he peaks in value, dump your Bitcoin. We talked about that a couple times already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Buy low, sell high. Great advice, right? But in 40 leagues, now we all have our 2 or 3 or 5 most important leagues, and yes, you can really zero down there, but it just, right now...
You ain't doing that League 36.
Right, exactly. If you have... This is what I tell people that want to get out from Murray, is take Kyler Murray, take your 24 first, and do the best you can to get up into the Justin Herbert tier. You're not going to get one of the big 3, but Murray plus your first will get you into Herbert. If you don't want to do that, if you don't think there's value there, then don't do it. Murray and your first could get you to Lamar.
Well, that's what I'll be doing after this show wraps up. Alan, don't ever call me Aaron Seslowsky. You were amazing. A fantastic guest. Super excited that you came on. Please plug everything that you're working on. Let the people know where they can find you, get every bit of your content.
Well, here, let me return the compliment first, because I was going to, you beat me to it. It's always, and I think that you're doing, I'm a fan of what you do. And also I think that you have a really exciting future doing this. And anyone listening to your show is already a fan of you. I can't wait. You came on the RotoWire podcast. What I'm most excited about is to show the RotoWire audience, a lot of them are newer to Dynasty, and we're getting more and more new experienced players come in, is show them that what you're doing. I really enjoy the way that you think about the game. And not only, and most importantly, I love the way you deliver information. I told you that's what most attracted me to your style in the beginning. So compliment return. Look at this love fest.
I know.
I really enjoy what you're doing, and through my connections with Player Profiler, I'm meeting a lot of people that Matt's opening my eyes to. One of Matt Kelly's superpower is he has an eye for really smart and talented people, and then also he brings me on too. So I'm not in that group, but
no, you are on that group. You are absolutely in that group, Alan.
I appreciate it. So now that the audience is done throwing up from listening to us make out with each other, Matty Kiwoom,
we were talking about going topless here.
Yeah,
we talked about being gay together.
Gay podcasts are the future of fantasy
Pride
football.
Month, baby. Here, Pride Month here.
I'm all for it. It's funny because my mom she's been out forever, right? So and so in high school, people used to say to me, "Oh, do you ever see your mom kissing a woman?" I said, "Trust me, there's nothing hot about 60-year-old lesbians. Nothing." Nothing hot about it, right? I grew up around it my whole life, but there's nothing hot about 72-year-old lesbians. So that aside, let me do a plug. If you want, I always believe if you want to be good at fantasy football, you have to buy multiple draft kits. Fantasy football players, the only people that will spend $100 to win 50. I'm included on that, right? And
Guilty.
I'm a paying member of Player Profiler, but I also suggest that you check out the RotoWire Fantasy Football Draft Kit, and we're going to give it to you for free for 2 days. All you do is go to rotowire.com/try. Rotowire.com/try, and you just put in your email, and the paywall unlocks. You can see everything we have for 2 days, and if you don't like what you see, it just lapses in 2 days, and there's no thing to cancel. There's no annoying credit card that you don't put your credit card in. So that, and then also if you have SiriusXM and you type in the Dynasty Hour, you love Dynasty content like we all do. We put up a couple episodes, including one with Matt Kelly, and you can check us out every week on SiriusXM on Sundays during the summer from 1 to 3 p.m. And then we'll see from there. So starting, I think, in July 4th weekend, every Sunday, 1 to 3, and then, of course, the RotoWire Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for having me, man.
Of course. And RotoWire is such a beast in the space. It's been around for so long. So what you guys are doing over there, fantastic. And, Alan's 100% right. You don't get all your information from one source. You got to have to diversify your information. Get some. So get that world famous draft kit from Player Profiler. Get the RotoWire draft kit and really dominate all your leagues. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Matty Kiwoom. Make sure you subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel, which I'm sure you're all ready since you're checking out the game plan. Like this video, leave a comment, let Alan know, let me know if we should throw it all away and run off and be together for the rest of our lives. Maybe
exactly.
That's something we'll figure out. We'll do that.
And Matty, I'm glad you've become a friend. I really do enjoy you, and I enjoy your friendship. I'm glad we connected and we're continuing to talk. So
absolutely.
I
and if you're ever in the Northeast, you're ever in Massachusetts in the summer, Holla at your boy. We'll have to go check out a Red Sox game or something. It'll be too much fun.
Yeah, no, I'm a New Yorker, native New Yorker, and obviously, the last decade, 10 years, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. But yeah, no, I'm with you. If I'm ever up that way, and I very well might be in December, I will certainly at least look you up for a cocktail.
Absolutely. So that is this episode of the Game Plan. Make sure you come on back next week, and I'll talk to you. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.